All right, let's jump right into this. Welcome to this explainer, where we're going to totally move past that generic advice you hear every single day and look at the actual neurological science behind managing your mental health from the inside out. Taking care of your mental well-being is absolutely crucial. It's quite possibly one of the most important skills we can develop as humans, yet it is so rarely taught in any sort of structured way. Well, today, we're changing that, one brain region at a time.
Exercise, sleep more, think positive, talk to someone, practice gratitude. Okay, be honest, you've heard this exhausting list of platitudes your whole life, right? It can feel a little hollow. But today, we are going to explore what is genuinely happening inside your brain when you actually do these things. We'll look at why some of these approaches actually work, while others just leave you feeling like you're going through the motions. We're ditching the surface-level tips and diving straight into the biology. To make this super concrete, we've structured this explainer into 5 key pillars: rethinking mental health, the nervous system, sleep and movement, connection and cognition, and finally, when to seek professional help.
Okay, part 1, rethinking mental health.
Before we get into the tactical stuff, there's a massive, fundamental shift in perspective we need to make here. Managing mental health is not about forcing yourself to always be happy or somehow eliminating negative emotions completely. Negative emotions are literally just data. Sadness tells you something mattered to you. Anxiety flags uncertainty. So, our new goal? It's about developing the scientifically backed skill of emotional regulation. It's about feeling those emotions and processing them without being totally overwhelmed or defined by them. And the best news is that emotional regulation is a skill. It can be learned, practiced, and strengthened.
Moving on to part 2, the nervous system. The whole foundation of emotional regulation comes down to understanding your autonomic nervous system. Behind the scenes, it generally runs in one of 2 modes. First, you've got the sympathetic mode. This is your fight, flight, or freeze response. It is flooded with cortisol and adrenaline, and it is 100% focused on immediate survival. Then, you have the parasympathetic mode: rest, digest, and recover. This is where healing actually happens. It's where your prefrontal cortex is active and where genuine human connection thrives. The tricky part is that many of us dealing with chronic stress are basically trapped in that sympathetic threat response. So, our primary goal is figuring out how to consciously shift gears back into parasympathetic recovery.
So how exactly do we force that shift? Well, the most direct, evidence-based way to activate that rest and digest mode is by stimulating the vagus nerve. Think of the vagus nerve as a massive communication superhighway between your brain and your body. And the absolute most effective way to hit the brakes and stimulate it is through something you already do thousands of times a day: breathing. It's wild, but your breath is actually the only autonomic function you have conscious control over.
But it's all about how you leverage that breath. Here's the trick. Make your exhale longer than your inhale. Specifically, inhaling for 4 counts and exhaling for 6 to 8 counts. When you do this, you're executing a direct biological intervention. It's not just taking a breather. Doing this for literally just 4 to 5 minutes measurably drops your cortisol and quiets down your amygdala. It signals to your brain, hey, the threat is over, we are safe. If you practice this daily, it actually trains your nervous system to find that calm much faster when life inevitably gets chaotic.
All right, let's look at part 3, sleep and movement. Now that we know how to ground ourselves with our breath, we have to look at the 2 biological non-negotiables. Number 1 is sleep. During deep sleep, your brain activates what's called the glymphatic system. You can think of it like a neurological night shift cleaning crew. It literally flushes out the toxic metabolic waste that builds up in your brain all day. Plus, during REM sleep, your brain is busy reprocessing emotionally charged experiences, basically stripping away their sting. So getting 7 to 9 hours, not a luxury, it's a hard neurological requirement.
To really put this into perspective, get this. Without adequate sleep, your amygdala's reactivity spikes by up to 60%. 60%! That is literally the difference between shrugging off an annoying email and having an absolute meltdown over it. Sleep deprivation crushes your prefrontal cortex function and jacks up your cortisol. When your brain is hyperactive like that, emotional regulation is pretty much impossible. You absolutely have to protect your sleep like it's your ultimate mental health tool. Because, well, it is.
And that brings us to the second non-negotiable: movement. We all know exercise gives you endorphins, but it goes way deeper than that. When you move your body, you produce something called BDNF, or brain-derived neurotrophic factor. It's essentially like fertilizer for your brain. This incredible protein promotes neurogenesis, meaning it grows completely new neurons.
And it does this in the exact areas of the brain, like the hippocampus, that things like chronic stress and depression physically shrink. Movement isn't just a workout. It is literal medicine for your brain.
And honestly, the best part is that you don't need to go out and train like an Olympian to get these benefits. Research shows that just 30 minutes of brisk walking 5 times a week leads to highly measurable improvements in your mood, your anxiety levels, and your overall stress resilience. In fact, moderate, regular exercise has been shown to be just as effective as antidepressant medication for mild to moderate depression. How amazing is that?
Which brings us to part 4, connection and cognition.
We're moving from the physical body into our social world. Humans are fundamentally neurologically wired for connection. Back in the day, belonging to a group was quite literally required to survive. So today, your brain monitors your social connections with the exact same intensity it uses for physical safety. When you feel genuinely seen and understood, your brain releases oxytocin, your cortisol levels tank, and your nervous system actually co-regulates with the other person. And remember, quality over quantity. One deep, safe relationship is profoundly more protective for your brain than dozens of surface-level acquaintances. Okay, now let's talk about that voice inside your head, your cognition. Your thoughts are not facts. Let that sink in, because it is one of the most liberating insights in cognitive neuroscience. Your brain is a thought-generating machine, pumping out roughly 60,000 thoughts a day. And guess what? The vast majority of them are totally automatic, deeply habitual, and heavily biased by whatever emotional state you're in right now. You literally do not have to believe every single thought your brain throws at you.
So, what on earth do we do with those 60,000 thoughts? We use something called the cognitive gap process. This is basically the bread and butter of cognitive behavioral therapy. Look, trying to silence your thoughts is a completely losing battle. Instead, you create a gap. First, you just observe the thought. Then, you gently question it. And finally, you deliberately choose how to respond. Every time you do this, you are literally wiring new neural pathways in your brain that default to more balanced, grounded thinking. It's a real game changer.
Finally, part 5. When to seek help. While these biological and cognitive tools are incredibly effective for managing your day-to-day life, understanding their limits is super important. If you find your struggles are moving past what you can handle on your own, look out for these signs. Is your ability to work taking a hit? Are your relationships suffering? Are your sleeping or eating habits totally thrown off? Have you just lost that sense of meaning in your daily routine? If you're nodding along to these, seeking professional support like a trauma-informed therapist or a psychiatrist is the absolute smartest, most compassionate move you can make for yourself.
I really, really want you to hear this. Asking for help is not admitting defeat. No way. Therapy helps rewire the nervous system in ways we simply cannot access alone in our own heads. And sometimes, neurochemical imbalances or deep emotional wounds require targeted medical interventions that, frankly, a brisk walk and some deep breathing just aren't going to fix. Recognizing when you need that extra layer of support is a sign of profound strength.
At the end of the day, managing your mental health isn't some final destination where you just arrive, check a box, and say, okay, I'm cured. It's a gentle, daily practice of returning to your breath, returning to your body, prioritizing genuine connection, and choosing balanced thoughts. You're a complex human being with an amazing nervous system that deserves real care. You don't have to do it perfectly, you just have to keep showing up.
So I want to leave you with this to ponder. Which of today's science-backed strategies are you going to start with to actively rewire your nervous system? Is it the extended exhale breathing? Are you going to fiercely protect your sleep tonight, or maybe take that 30-minute walk? Whatever it is, what's the very first step you'll take today to care for your incredible brain? Thanks so much for joining me for this explainer, and I really hope this helps you build a healthier, far more resilient mind from the inside out.